Hey, everybody. We'll get to the show in just a minute. But before we start, I just wanted to talk to you real quick about something we're doing here at Lions of Liberty, trying to help out with the coronavirus. If you've heard an interview earlier this week that ran, if you scroll back in your feed, you heard an interview with Gret Glyer of DonorSee that Mark did. That's Gret, like Brett, but with a G. And Gret started DonorSee as a way in order for people who are donating to charities through DonorSee. It allows them to actually see the money at work. You actually get updated with the videos to see your money in action. And what DonorSee is doing with their coronavirus initiative is they're going to be helping people in the poorest parts of the world deal with the coronavirus. So what we're doing at Lions of Liberty is we are giving 10% of our patron money, of our Lions of Liberty Pride dollars, which we thank our generous patrons so much for supporting us. We are turning around and trying to help out with this crisis. So if you'd like to be a part of it, if you're not already, we would love to have you in our Lions of Liberty Pride. Go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And please check out Gret Glyer and the great work he's doing at DonorSee. And you can find out more specifically about this project by going to DonorSee.com/coronavirus. Thank you.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. What is Felony Friday? Felony Friday is a show where every single week we're going to do a deep dive and we're going to examine and expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system. Now, if this is your first time listening to Felony Friday, your first time listening to any of the shows we have here on Lions of Liberty, sit back, relax, enjoy the show, put your feet up. If you're driving, please don't put your feet up. But if you've been back several times, if this is a regular habit of listening, why haven't you subscribed? Or maybe you have subscribed. Thank you if you subscribed. But if you haven't, please do so. Whatever podcasting app you're listening on, please just scroll up to the top there, punch that subscribe button, and you'll get every single episode of the Lions of Liberty podcast and of Felony Friday delivered to your little listening device. And also, if you really enjoy what you're hearing here, please think about giving us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcast, especially if you listen there, because it helps with the algorithms and all that crazy stuff. Without further ado, let's get rolling with today's show. Today, my guest on Felony Friday is Andy Williams Jr. Andy is a licensed Baptist minister. He's a social entrepreneur, an activist, and a libertarian candidate for president of the United States. Andy is a guy who he's had a tumultuous past. He's made some mistakes, like so many of my guests have made mistakes, has paid a price for them. But with Andy, he wants to make sure to use those to fuel his fire in his quest for justice. Andy, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to getting to talk with you and for my audience to get to hear your story. I've had a couple listeners of my show reach out, and I guess they heard you speak, maybe at libertarian conventions across the country, and they said, you got to get this guy on. You got to get his story out there. So I said, all right, let's do it. And so I'm excited to learn more about you. And as we were talking about in the pre-show, really where I like to start with people is just for everyone to really get an idea of, where you're from, where everything started for you. If you could just start out by sharing with my audience a little bit about, where you grew up, your background, what were your early years like?
I grew up in Aurora, Illinois. It's the second largest city in the state of Illinois, next to Chicago, which I don't, look at Chicago. I don't know if you really call that a big thing, because Chicago is in its it's its own city, its own self, several little cities in Chicago. But I grew up in Aurora, Illinois. Was born October 10th, 1972. And my parents, my dad and mom, separated when I was 2. And my dad started dating this white lady, German lady, Bridget Williams, my stepmom. And so for about 10 years, I was raised with her. So I had a middle-class home. She worked at a factory, and my dad owned his own construction business. My stepmom was a disciplinarian. You know, she was the one that made sure schoolwork was done, chores were done, and she was the authoritative and the disciplinarian. And the way that I was disobedient brought on what I would call severe punishment, and in today's time it would be child abuse. But I look back and just say that's what she did based on how she understood to discipline and love, you know, a little rebellious little child, which I think I was more curious than rebellious. But then they went on to have 2 children, two younger brothers, and I had 1 older brother. And my childhood, for the most part, was great, other than being on punishment. And when she left when I was about 12 years old, I got involved in gangs. I didn't have no accountability to have to be home after school, homework. You know, my dad being an entrepreneur, owning his own business, I learned his schedule, like what jobs he was working on. And me getting involved in gangs wasn't like something I got jumped into or nothing. I just started hanging out, walking home with the black kids, and just wind up being guilty by association. But in grade school, because that was middle school when I was being able to actually pursue my relationship with the gang members, the black ones, because in grade school, all my friends were Hispanic. They were Latin Kings and Deuces. And I looked up to them because it was cool, you know. Like, I went to a predominantly Hispanic grade school, and my stepmom wasn't having it. So, you know, no matter what I would try to do, she was, you know, that watchful eye. Oh, nah, I don't know what you're up to, but nope. But take the shoestring out of your shoe. You know, I tried to use the color dye to make a green shoestring. And she was like, no. But when she was no longer there, you know, I just started hanging out with the gang members.
Was that pretty? I mean, was that pretty common for you know, for your friends and, you know, the rest of the kids you're going to school with to be in gangs? Or
I say it was half and half, because I had a best friend, Jonathan Hughes. He had a 2-parent household, and we were both smart. He didn't do nothing with gangs. I just thought it was cool, you know. I don't have the story that said I got involved in gangs for protection or nothing like that. If I would not have went to the middle school Waldo, I would have wind up being part of the Latin Kings or the Deuces, because the school they predominantly went to was a middle school called Simmons. And one of my friends, Dennis Evans, who wound up getting murdered, you know, and right after middle school, I think like the beginning of high school, he was a black kid, and he joined the Latino gangs. And I think he had a single family house. I know he had his mother. I don't 100% remember. But then a lot of my friends that were black that went on to that school, they just joined the gang. That was the culture. That was the neighborhood. That was the environment, you know. So, and some of the Latino gang members, they had 2-parent households. So it wasn't like, you know, again, I can't speak for them personally. I just know how I look back now and see all that. It wasn't like we had broken families or something like that, at least not from the outside. I just think when you don't have, let's say, a Boys and Girls Club, or, you know, certain extracurricular activities that nurture the creativity in young kids, you know, I think if I would have went to a Montessori school or something like that, where I'm allowed to think independent, who knows? I would I don't know what I would have. I would have been exactly what I am now because I'm independent thinking now. So
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of people, probably a lot of libertarians. It's kind of, at least for me, it was, it's kind of ingrained in you from an early age that I was never interested in the the topics I was learning in school. I mean, there was a little bit here and there, but thinking about other things, thinking about ways to be creative, and probably you the same. Maybe the gang was sort of an outlet for you.
Yeah, I do think so. When I started hanging out with the gangs in middle school, I became I was already stealing little stupid stuff all the time, and then I would always watch people, and learn people, and then I would see the older guys, drug dealers, whatever, listen to music and stuff. So I would go complete tape orders for them. Like, man, I got 10 tapes for $50 or something. And then they were just an entrepreneur. And that's just, how I just started being real popular with them. When I was in high school, I started working at a grocery store and I would sell Word Up magazines. That was like the hip hop where you would have all the rappers and stuff in these magazines. And everybody in the school, would have those Word Up magazines when they come out because I'd be stealing them, bringing them to school, selling them for $2 a magazine, sell you a pin up for 50 cents, be like, it's cheaper to buy the whole book. I just want the pin up, Andy. So that's just what I would do. And then when I would get suspended from school, I'd get to hang out with my dad in his construction business. So he would always threaten to, I'm going to discipline you. But he followed through twice, but he hardly ever would follow through. And one time in 8th grade, he spanked me in school. It's a concerned parent. Man, I'm like, but the old school know me, Dad, don't. Embarrass me. I was embarrassed.
Yeah. So eventually you ended up dropping out of high school, right?
Yeah, I flunked in 9th grade. And so when I went back, which would have been my sophomore year to freshman year, I didn't have like our 9th grade classes, but I had a 9th grade homeroom, and that was embarrassing to me, because I knew, like, I'm way more smarter than that. I just was like, no, I'm embarrassed. I don't want to do this. So I was like, forget going back to school. I'm not doing it. I just had to figure out how to lie through my dad, and that only lasted so long. And then I wound up just moving out because he kicked me out, which he didn't. I mean, I just slept in the garage at my friend's house. That just became another avenue for me to just start stealing to support a lifestyle of fancy clothes or, what I thought was in, But I also would cut grass on the side, shovel snow. It wasn't like I just was total like a criminal, but I was, again, an independent thinker. I wanted to do my own thing. And my dad, I think a lot of times people think that, if you don't have a dad, that's what leads you astray. No, I had a dad, I still do. I just was disobedient. And so if I didn't follow the rules at home, Pop said, you want to be grown? Well, be grown then. So I did. Yeah.
So how long, how many years later until you got arrested for the first time?
I got arrested as a juvenile for snatching a gold chain. And then I think my very first arrest was I was either mouthing off at the police or doing something. And back then, I'm 47, right? Yeah, 47. So back then I probably was like 15 or something. And they didn't arrest you, like they would talk to your parents. And my dad was like, he want to be a smart, take him to jail. And then they did. They took me to jail. And I think that was the wrong lesson that my dad should have done because I wind up saying, this ain't nothing. Like, whatever. That's what you want to do. Cool. And so from there, now the police, not familiar with me, but, I'm familiar with this process of going to jail. And then I just would get caught stealing or doing something and started going to jail. And some mob action, gang fights, would take me to jail. Then eventually I snatched the gold chain off somebody, and I wind up going to jail for real. Like going to jail, the county jail, and then I wind up going to prison. So that was like my real first thing in time in the county jail.
So you ended up going to prison. How old were you when you went to prison?
I want to say 19, about 19, 18, 19.
How much time did you do?
A total of 13 months. It was like 9 months in the county and like 4 months in prison. Yeah.
And when you got out of prison, had anything changed? Did you go right back to the way you were, the same thing you were doing before, or?
No, when I got out of jail, I paroled to my childhood home. So my dad still owned the house I grew up when I was a little kid, but he didn't live there. But he was renting it out to my Uncle Bobby, which he was strung out on heroin. And my homies come by, and one of them, cocaine had obviously just got introduced, to the streets at that time, at least for where we was. And he said, man, you in a good spot right here, Andy. And before you know it, I was selling cocaine out the house, and my dad and my uncle my dad said, son, you need to be careful. My uncle said, word on the street, they watching this house. Cause my uncle being strung out on heroin, he was a pimp, a washed up pimp, but he was a pimp. His wife was a prostitute with a couple other stuff, but this was all downstairs. I lived upstairs, and I wound up getting raided 3.5 months after getting out of jail, and went back to the county jail. Was on my way to prison for like 6 to 30 because they raided my house and caught me with an ounce. And back then, for my generation at that time, because one of my friends was at the house that morning because I was going to trade drugs for guns, and you don't do that by yourself, but it was a setup. So when I got arrested, I basically confessed, like, hey, dude, didn't have nothing to do with it. I found the drugs. And that confession was going to send me up, the creek again. But the judge gave me a law library pass, and I spent about 7 months in that law library. About 6 months in the law library, and wind up finding a way to beat the case. Took it to a bench trial and won in a bench trial. Beat the case.
You beat the case
got out.
Defending yourself?
No, I had a public defender, Bruce Steinberg, but we would bump heads because I'm still an independent thinker, and when I read something that applies to my life, and I say, whoa, this will work. I got the statement suppressed. I made up a lie that the police officer promised me leniency if I told him where the drugs came from, and then it was just me in a room with another person with drugs, and the case was People versus Wolski and People versus Nettles, that basically said mere proximity is insufficient to prove possession. And it was a Supreme Court case from the 60s, I believe it was, one of them. And when I gave it to the public defender, he was like, you're doing good work and everything, but this is an old case. It ain't okay. So the judge, when he made his ruling, he sent his assistant up there to pick the case that I had, and said, you know what, this is dead on with this case. And I laughed inside, like I told the public defender to use this case. So I wind up, helping with my legal defense, because I stayed in them books. My attorney, all he had to do was draft the motions. I got copies of most of my whole file, and I would write the judge saying, I need a disclosure of the informant, because once I get that, then I'll be able to prove that, just like the letters I would write, which is going to be in my book called The Hood Candidate. So I got a book that I'm co-authoring with somebody that lays this all out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but then when I got out of jail, go ahead.
That's incredible. So you beat the case. So what happens from there? I mean, do you still go back to the same criminal drug activity, or what happens next?
Well, I had barely got introduced to the dope game prior to getting arrested, being 3 months out of prison. So I get out, and And I go to the law library, spend 3 months in there. And then I start selling dope because now I knew the law. And I wound up becoming like a big time drug dealer. Moved up in the ranks in the street organization again, had a very high ranking position. But I was an entrepreneur. I was all about business. You know, I had a beautiful little 1980 Malibu with hydraulics on it, smoked out windows, you know. And I knew the law. So the police knew, you know, if you pull Andy over, you better have a legit reason because he is going to bring you one. And I would. I'd be like, what you put me up for? Got a seatbelt, got an insurance card, even though it was a fake insurance card. You know, with your windows up. I can have my windows as dark as I want to because it's a 1980. And I would tell them, and they couldn't do nothing. I'd be riding around with dope in the car, pistol in the car, and I would never worry about it. You know, I knew I wasn't breaking no laws. So that's just what I did. And then the guy who started the Gangster Disciples, Larry Hoover, he came out with a new concept called growth and development. And it basically was saying, and if I take it to me, Andy, personal, it was saying, Andy, you're part of the problem that's destroying the community. And I remember at one point I had sold some drugs to this girl's father. I mean, this mechanic guy was a real good mechanic, you know, had a real good job. He was my mechanic, and you know, I'd always buy, you know, the kids in the neighborhood candy ice cream. And this one particular girl was like, I don't want your ice cream money. You know, you're the reason why my family is tore apart. And so that came out pretty much the same time. I was wondering, like, what am I doing with all this gang stuff? This is so stupid for me. And then the new concept came out and was like, you know what? We need to better ourselves. You know, we can't be destroying our community. And so that's how I walked away from the gangs, because the leader of the organization came out with the blueprint and was like, we need to evolve better than what we're doing. You know, so the leader was basically saying, I've been in prison 23 years and, you know, I've seen you know, brothers come back and forth into these doors and this not where it's at no more, you know? And a lot of us took that concept and, you know, moved on. And that concept for me, it was shocking, you know, like, whoa, what is this happening? And I wind up just doing a whole 360 degrees. It's like I have been walking in darkness my life, and then a light popped on, and then I could see, like, whoa, but the people around me still were walking in darkness. And I had a dope case that was pending that I was going to win anyway. And I went to court one day and basically I told the judge, you know, this is modern day slavery. What you're doing up here, you're just like the slave master. And they locked me up in a mental health center for 6 months, you know, for pissing the judge off. Because I got the whole record. And, you know, it was nothing wrong with me. I just was, you know, as I would say, an angry black man. Like I wasn't a man, I was a boy. I was just angry at, you know, the system around me. And there was nobody, you know, at least that I felt could understand what I was seeing in life other than Larry Hoover and Oprah. The only two people. And John F. Kennedy, because I went to the library and would read books about J. F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. And I just started reading a lot about history at that point. So they locked me up. And then when I got out of jail, when I got out that mental health center, that's when 100%, I'm going to say 90%, my life changed. I'm like, I'm not doing this life no more for real.
Mm-hmm. That's hard to do. Like you were saying, you're walking, you know, your eyes are opened, and that doesn't mean that everybody, all your friends and your family, everyone you're hanging out with, doesn't mean they're experiencing the same thing. So that's hard to change. How did you get past that hurdle? How did you, you know, not get sucked back in?
Because it really was my spirituality. You know, as a little kid being on punishment, I could only read my book of Bible stories that the Jehovah's Witnesses would give. So I would learn all the little Bible stories. And then when I'd be on punishment, because I was an altar boy growing up, and I also do sign language with the church. And then so when this thing, went around, happened to me, I was able to draw back on the roots of my spirituality and go back to Christ, go back to God, and, walk in this faith walk that I had before. And so between the faith walk and the vision of Larry Hoover, I just tended to outshine a lot of people around me because of my understanding that I feel was just natural. Like, it's just something I was born with. And it has a lot to do with my dad's example. I will say, my dad, he has a lot of faith, and he knew how to provide. Like, he knew how to, work. So that's just what I went to. And then a lot of my friends in '96 was getting killed too. Like, my ex-wife's brother got murdered in front of the house. The friend that introduced me to the dope game, he had got, murdered. In fact, '96 was probably like 28 murders. And out of those, at least 12 of them was my friend, like close friends. And then one day, when my ex-wife's, her name is Shay, her brother Lou got killed in front of my house. She, was moving to Atlanta, and that's what took me out of Aurora to go to Naperville. And it wasn't like the shooting part. It was the fact that I had my own family, I had a daughter, and then she was pregnant, and that was, kind of like where my life was going. And I was like, no, please don't go, baby. Please don't go, And I had two women leave me growing up, my mom and my stepmom. I didn't want her to leave. So I moved to Naperville and got a job selling cars. And I went to church and became a ordained minister and started that journey.
And then another thing about your journey from your bio that jumped out to me is you fought and won a wrongful foreclosure for 13 years. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So when I left the mortgage company, when I left the car sales, I got into the mortgage business, and I wound up being a branch manager for 3 years until I started my own mortgage company. So that was like early 2002, 3. I had my own mortgage company. We done moved into a $250,000 home. Like, life is good. I'm a mortgage broker. I got some real estate properties. And then I get put in foreclosure. And the first time I got put in foreclosure was because I was taking all my profit trying to be a real estate investor and, working with other people. So I had to keep their name straight. And I'm working all on commission and not managing the money right. How they say you biting off more than you can chew. Mm-hmm. That was me. And then, so I reinstated that mortgage. I had to pay $20,000. And from reinstating that mortgage, getting back on track, the servicer was letting loans, started stealing, misapplying my payments, forced placing insurance on my loan. And I would be late, like 3 weeks late past the grace period, but never 30 days late, because the mortgage was in my dad's name, in my Shay's. And so they filed a foreclosure. And the reason why I started fighting, because I knew I could beat it, because I wasn't behind on my payments. I had the paperwork to show I had made all the payments, and the numbers my records didn't add up to their records. It's because I didn't want my dad to know I had foreclosure on his credit. Because Pop's got like 700 credit score. Like, this was if he found out, it was going to piss him off. So that's where the fight started coming in. And then I just started uncovering a whole nother scheme. And they originally dismissed the foreclosure case. They went for summary judgment. And I, hit the books. I got experience going to the law library from back in the dope case days. And they wind up dismissing the foreclosure, only to bring it back up 2 months later. Now saying I owe like $40,000 or something. They add all these extra fees and stuff on there. And then I just fought. And then I learned all about mortgage servicing fraud, securitization. And the truth is I won the foreclosure case in the fact that I helped over 200 people. I lost in the foreclosure case because the judges were not ruling according to the law. Like, my research took me across the world. I was talking to people from Good Morning America, Catherine Porter at the University of Iowa. She was a professor. I had went to Florida being part of conferences. Like, I met so many people about this stuff, advocates, activists, and I wind up moving out of the house because when I had wind up going to school to learn more about the law, to tell the judge, I'm gonna show you I can win, because I had a settlement conference with her. She said, I don't ever see people winning. Your best bet is to try to work this out. I'm like, I'm not working this out with no criminal. I mean, I didn't say that then, but that's exactly where I was at. Like, they did wrong. They got to be held accountable. So I went and got a bachelor's degree. And during that time, one of the professors was a lawyer, and he wound up hiring me. And the same time he hired me to work in his law firm was the same time one of the clients I was helping in foreclosure had got evicted. And so the lawyer, we were representing some association of the townhome I could move to. So I rented the house out to that family, moved out of Aurora to Glendale Heights to a townhome. And I fought it for 13 years. They stayed in the house about 4 or 5 years. The judges ruled 100% wrong, favor to the banks, and I was going to appeal it. And then I just finally just said, you know what, I'm done. Hey, help the people stay in the house an extra year, paying no rent, try to help them buy it. And then I just walked away from it. And last year I was doing a credit seminar, and I'm telling you, the Holy Spirit said, right before I was getting up to speak, he said, you never was going to win that case, Andy, because you trusted me. I'm like, what? Yeah. When I bought the house, I put the house in my dad's name and my my ex-wife's, because the lender I wanted to use was giving me a good rate, but I had to use my dad's name because I was an account executive with this company. So they couldn't do it in my name because it would have been a conflict of interest. So I'm like, all right, and that's what God was saying, like, you came into the deal with unclean hands. You went into court acting like you was your dad. Like, you can't trust. I'm not a conspirator with you, son. I'm like, okay. But again, I learned a lot from it all. So it was great.
Yeah, you've a crazy background with so many different things you've been involved with. And then from there, you went on to start a paralegal service, right? So you're sort of like everything you get involved in, you turn into, you're an entrepreneurial venture, it seems.
I just take everything to the fullest and try to learn everything I can about something. So I consume it. I consume the word. And the foreclosure took me to the NAACP to wind up being a vice president and chairman of houses. And I went, to all the national conventions for like 3-4 years, only to find out, and I'm saying this, that they were part of the problem too. And I say this because Wells Fargo is one of the huge foreclosures people. They ran a foreclosure mill. Mm-hmm. And when the NAACP sued Wells Fargo, they settled with them for, I want to say $100,000 or something stupid. And maybe it wasn't $100,000, but I'm going to tell you it was stupid, because all they did was help them set up a financial literacy course out there in Maryland. But that didn't make all the millions of the NAACP members whole that they had stole from.
Right. They took a kickback, essentially.
That's what I call it. And I don't think they knew no better. Like, I really do not believe that they knew any better, because what Andy would have did is would have said, listen, you done screwed over all our members. This is what we're going to do. We're going to use a Community Reinvestment Act, and you're going to help us rebuild our communities that you helped destroy. And then we're cool. If not, we're going the full way. Because, see, the lawsuit would have given a greater net than it would have the settlement that they did to set up a financial literacy. Because financial literacy does not make me whole. I can balance a checkbook. We can do the basic here. That's what my stepmom taught me, how to balance a checkbook. So if you don't understand the simple basic part, that's why you will settle for something that simple. When I'm looking at the bigger picture, it's saying, millions of the members have lost, savings, retirement fund, cars being repossessed, all kinds of stuff.
What was Wells Fargo doing to steal from members?
The foreclosures.
So were they setting them up with loans that were? I mean, was it predatory lending, or what's the story?
Predatory lending, misapplying payments, forced placing insurance. It was a whole scheme that the mortgage servicers were doing all around. Bank of America, Countrywide, Litton Loans. Litton Loans was the master at it. IndyMac. So they all were doing that. And Wells Fargo was just part of the game plan. I can't think of the case right now, but it was a bankruptcy case, and the judge, she reamed Wells Fargo and was like, you guys charging all these property inspection fees, and she hit them with sanctions. I want to say like a couple $100,000 in sanctions, So, and they were doing that to everybody, not just, NAACP members. It was all across the country. I had met a lot of people in Florida. This guy named David Dayen that had wrote this book, Chain of Title. I met him personally, and the people he had wrote about, I talked to one of them. There's another guy, Jack Wright, Mortgage MS Servicing Fraud. I met him, and he had a problem with it was IndyMac or one of those. I think it was IndyMac. He wound up dying. Stress killed him.
Wow.
Just you see, when you're fighting for your rights and your life, and again, this is what libertarians know about. Like this is what we are. We don't just walk away because this is what the status quo or the easy way is. When you're fighting for liberty, you won't say, give me liberty or give me death.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how my life has been. That's why I consume everything, because I feel like I'm fighting for my own freedom. My foreclosure, I was fighting to keep my family in that house. I had 3 daughters now. Damn, this is our home. And you could see the breakup of that family, what happened to my youngest 2 children. Like, it just, the youngest one, like, it hit her so hard. And, I look at her being 21 now, and it's a lot of bad decisions I made too. But when that family is uprooted, you don't have that balance in the home. Even if it is, 2 parents arguing from time to time, it's still good times there too, but it was a better balance. And once that separation happened, and it wasn't, this is something I personally experienced, but then you think about all the other families, people in Indiana with murder-suicide because the foreclosure crisis hit them, and everything was destroyed, fighting these judges, fighting these attorneys. And it's like, where do you win? I mean, I wrote to the ARDC. I then did petition to the Supreme Court. Every step that you say that you could think of following the rules, I would learn them and follow them and get shut down. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's when I'm like, you know what? This sucks. It sucks.
So how do you get from that experience? Really, in many ways, you're fighting for your life, fighting for your family, fighting for, like you said, fighting for your freedom. How do you get from that to wanting to run for president and throw your hat in the ring into that circle?
The best part about this interview is you're a believer, so you'll understand this. I didn't make the decision to run for. I mean, I did, but it wasn't something I ever thought of. Like, I've been an activist in my community for over 20 years. And on May 3rd, 2019, I was sitting at the computer and the Holy Spirit, clear as day, said, "You want to run for president?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, what up?" You know? And this happened on a Friday night. And I, called my little sister, one of my friends, excited, like, "Yo, man, what you think? This is what I'm going to do." And then the next day, was going to paint. And I told my worker, Bill, I said, "Bill, I'm going to run for president." He said, "You can't. You're too honest." And then the guy I was working at his house, I was telling him, and he was like, "Man, get out of here." But, the more and more I started talking, the more and more it started making sense to him. And he was like, you sound like you're liberal. And, and I was scared to tell my wife, because if she said no, I'm like, what? But again, I didn't have the same faith I had today back then. Because, this is a journey. That was last May. We over here in March now.
Mm-hmm.
But I told her Monday, after I had posted on Facebook, and started getting responses like, "Hey, I'm in with you, cuz. Yeah, let's do this." And then I told her, and she was at work, and she was having a bad day at work. And so I bet, "You want me to bring you lunch?" I knew I had messed up a little bit. And then she was crying when I went to her. Her job was just pissing her off. And I said, "Babe," after I listened to her, I was like, "I think I'm going to want to run for president." And she's like, "Well, okay, well, let me pray about it." And she did. And then the next day she said, "Babe, I'm here for it. Let's do it." Wow. She said, "I don't know." I said, "Me neither." And I heard the Holy Spirit say, "You ain't supposed to know. That's what the trust in me is for. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to guide you." And I think so many times people, feel like you running for president, they say you can't win because they look at their own belief system. And when I was at the debate last Friday, being with all these, this is like the first real sit-down debate I had, I loved them brothers and sisters on that stage because we believe in liberty. Mm-hmm. So we're saying, you know what, I don't care how it looks, the odds look stacked up against us. We're going for what we believe in. Just like all those 24 whatever Democrats. I mean, that to me was ridiculous, because you should have picked the right few candidates, but I don't feel the same way with the Libertarians because we're fighting to get, it's like we're fighting to get on the ballot. We're fighting to get recognized. We're fighting to tell the people everything you asking for. Our party been representing since 1971. Like, again, it's in that situation. Like, can you not see? Do you not read? You want a candidate to represent you, and my party stands for freedom of oppression and liberty? Come on, man. That's why I be so mad at my friends. Like, if you don't mention Andy running for president, you ain't my homeboy then. You know what I'm saying? That's all you need to be talking about. You don't need to, when you talk about Bernie Sanders, Trump, or Biden, or anybody else, be like, "Well, my boy Andy coming, he gonna kick your ass. He gonna get you." Because I know him. I know how he fights for us. I'm fighting the police in my hometown right now. I texted the mayor today and said, "Look, dude, judgment coming to Aurora. You ought to repent. Y'all want to go to the church and get votes, but you don't want to follow the simple instructions of love your neighbor? And get on with that, dude." No. And I work for the mayor. I used to work because the guy I was working for in the mayor's office is the judge now. But he just became a judge like a week ago. But the mayor knew when I was fighting foreclosures. I don't play. I went after them banks. I sued every last one of them banks. Deutsche Bank, Bank of New York, Mellon, all of them in federal court under the RICO Act. I did. And that's what I'm about to do to my hometown. Sue them under the RICO Act for running a criminal enterprise. That's what they are, criminals.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting with you talking about, talking to your friends about supporting you, talking about you running for president, and they're talking about Bernie Sanders or whoever else. It's an interesting phenomenon that I've experienced the same thing with this podcast or with other ventures that, some of my best friends don't even listen to this podcast. And, they'll give me excuses that, they're too busy or whatever. I mean, I have a lot of listeners, strangers that reach out to me and thank me for what I'm doing, but I have good friends that won't listen to this. And I forget who said it, but I heard this somewhere. interesting phenomenon that people that you're closest to cannot see your greatness because your greatness is clouded by mistakes you've made or just normal everyday things that you do. They see that stuff, and people are so far removed from the celebrity of politicians, from a Donald Trump or a Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden or whoever. They only see, their best, well, maybe not all the time, but ideally, most of the time you would see a candidate like Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or whoever, these politicians, you just see their best side on TV, and you're not close to them, so you don't see all their, their inefficiencies or their poor qualities, things like that. So it's an interesting thing.
Right. But it doesn't bother me. When I feel like when God calls you, you just go for what you know, and for me, I draw so much inspiration from the Bible stories, like David when he went up against Goliath, and Saul was like, here's my armor, David was like, dude, I can't use that. And, and the other soldiers, even his own brothers was like, dude, you can't beat Goliath. And David was like, you don't know what I did out there in the field watching the sheep with the lion and the bear. Mm-hmm. You don't know that. That's what I tell, a lot of my friends on the other side, like, bro, they don't know about how you show up at the police station when they beat me up. They don't know about all these people you helped in foreclosure. They don't know about the people car you done bought or rent you done paid or all the things that I've done that I don't even care to even discuss. Who cares? You do it because you're in a position to do it. And I feel like, being the president of the United States, it's not the greatest leader. It's the greatest servant. Any person that says, I believe in the message of Jesus, you don't even have to believe in Jesus. How about that? But what about his message of how he knew who he was? But he didn't come to be served. He came to serve. Mm-hmm. Dr. King, same thing in the Drum Major Instinct. He said, the greatest among you shall be your servant. Gandhi, Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, William Lloyd Garrison. We can go all down the line throughout history. And we can look right now, Jimmy Carter, which I got a letter back from the foundation because I asked him to endorse me. They wrote back and said he's, due to his age, he can't meet with you. I didn't ask him to meet with me. I asked him to endorse me. Because he is the president that lives his life by example of serving. That's why. That's
the way it should be. I believe that. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your criminal justice platform. This is a criminal justice reform-centered show. So you talk about restorative justice, right? So in what ways would you make our criminal justice system more restorative? Do you have specific ideas or policies or anything like that?
So not so much policies, because I believe the Constitution lays out everything that needs to be done. It just needs to be implemented. And the 13th Amendment needs to be amended to abolish slavery, and it needs to take out the fact unless there was a crime. Like, it just needs to be abolished, period. Crime or no crime, because that's how the prison systems are being justified in what they're doing. And I 100% would abolish prison if I had that in my power to do so. But I would not abolish accountability, meaning I need to put you in a reformatory school. I don't care if you're 80 years old. You do something that harms somebody or take somebody for something, I need you to sit in time out until you figure it out, repent, that's what we say in the body of Christ, or be reformed, renew your mind. And we know you renew your mind because your parole agents will be former offenders. So we know, but also not just former offenders, because I think you need both people. Like, you need the individual that's never committed a crime, that just knows straight by the book, hey, and then you need the one that has redeemed himself, because the two together will bring the wisdom, like Solomon would have. You got to have that balance. So, when I look at that, I would decriminalize all drugs. No, you're not going to go around here selling no kilos, think you're okay with that, because that's not for personal consumption. But what we can do is take a vocational school and teach the natural medicinal purpose of the poppy, and then that's how we'll heal people from the coronavirus. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that's the real solution, but I'm just saying.
Hey, it might be. I don't know if anyone's tried it yet, but yeah.
If you use the natural plant of what the Creator created stuff for, the natural resources, before man came in and tried to be God. Because that's what I think. Man tries to be God, and I'm going to lock you up, I'm going to punish you. And God ain't never said nothing like that. He never did that. He said redemption, reconciliation, forgiveness, as well as accountability, because the Lord chastises those who we love. So we need a little chastisement when you're disobedient. But I'm not finna try to, be so cruel and unusual and violate the 8th Amendment and give you 6 life sentences and think I have the ability to put death penalty on you. No. I don't have the right to choose to put somebody to death.
What do you say to people, especially, with you being a Christian, because I know there are, and I'm sure you've met them, there are a lot of Christians who are pro-death penalty. What would you say to someone like that?
I would say, show me in the scriptures where it says, kill your neighbor. Just ask them. Mm-hmm. Because last time I heard it says, love your enemies, do good to those who do bad to you. Love your neighbor. Any neighbor. I don't care what neighbor it is. You your neighbor? Right. So how can you say you love God whom you've never seen, but the neighbor you see? And I give them the Good Samaritan story. Hey, what about that story? Show me anywhere in there, that God is saying, eye for an eye still. Take somebody's life. And I don't even know if God said it then. I think the red letters give us the best story about what really was being said. Because I have a whole interpretation about how man do something and say, well, I did this in the name of God. And God said, listen, I'm the Lord thy God. I don't change. I ain't never told you to murder nobody. You out here causing wars, blaming it on me, and now the people think I'm a murderer. I am not. So no, I feel like a lot of people read the scriptures and don't even understand the message. It's a message of hope, redemption, and love. And these stories are there so we don't repeat them. Because I know I did. David, adulterer, man, I was like, let me do what David did. I'm do the same thing. That's a whole nother story about how I was a broken man, was never faithful longer than 6 months until I fell flat on my face and realized, whoa, bro, you was out here kill, stealing, and destroying. John 10:10, I was the enemy. I was the thief. That's what I was. So I've admitted. Yeah, but I overcame that. I conquered that. Mm-hmm. So it's, my past is where I'm free from. So I share it openly so somebody else can get free. And I've helped more people that I can even talk to. Because it's not like I got to keep tabs on it, This campaign for presidency, here's the difference between me and other candidates, and not libertarian candidates. My message is going to be the same November 4th as the same it was November 2nd. Because I'm about my Father's business. So it don't matter to me. It's whatever the Lord's will is. Now, I feel there's things that I need to do, but since God called me to this campaign, I tell him, you handle the campaign. I'm going to seek ye first your kingdom and your righteousness. You take care of the campaign because you asked me to do this. Now, I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going back to paint now because my bank account was short, just about bankrupt, trying to run for a campaign, and God said, this is not what I asked you to do. You're right. And since I started following the Spirit lead, then now the door's been opening up, and I've been getting donations to supply the needs. Like, no, I don't need a huge bank account. What I need is to understand what the scriptures say when God says he take the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. I think I could have won the campaign for president with less than $5,000. That's what I think I could do. Why? Because I have the most unique story. That's why. Mm-hmm. And I got a song coming out, The Hood Candidate, the book called The Hood Candidate. Everything that I had started working on years before, it's all coming to pass right now. Because now I don't have no other choice.
I think you hit on something really, really important there, talking about story that libertarians miss. And Mark Whitney, who's another libertarian candidate who's been on this show, talked about that same thing, how story is so important, especially for a libertarian candidate. Because that's a good story, somebody that can relate to people, can relate to the common man who's been through troubles, who's seen highs, seen lows. That's what the Libertarian Party is going to need in order to compete with Republicans and Democrats who are just buying up all the time. If you have a story that can bring people together, I mean, that's what's going to give us a chance.
I think so. And what my heart says, Andy, in fact, I was talking to the Holy Spirit about it today. And I said, what Barack Obama was to the Democrat Party, that's what I'm going to be to the Libertarian Party. I know I am. Like, there's nothing, and this is not from like pride or arrogance. It's just knowing greater is he that is in you than he that's in the world. When I started this campaign, I started as an independent. The Holy Spirit led me to the Libertarian Party. In fact, my wife had told me this a long time ago. Like, babe, you sound like a libertarian. I never even heard of no libertarian. What are you talking about? Yeah, and my wife is Puerto Rican. How about that? And Puerto Ricans can't vote. Like, the whole campaign, just the way I look at it, because my two little brothers that I talked about, one was gay, committed suicide. The other committed suicide on an opioid overdose. Those are personal things to me. We don't debate about why I care about, human rights. Mm-hmm. You have the right to choose whatever you want to choose. Not only is that scripture, because it said Joshua 24:15, as for me and my house will serve the Lord. You do whatever you want to do in your house. But that's the same thing the libertarians say. Maximum freedom, limited government. Get the government out of your business. They need to stop trying to govern you. That's it. The government should be there to aid and assist the people, not to control the people. They don't have experience. If I was the governor, president, or governor, anybody in that position right now with this coronavirus, I know how to make a decision that works for all. I knew what it was like to have hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I knew what it's like to have no dollars. Being an entrepreneur with a visionary. So if you're going to say you guys got to shut everything down, you better find that stimulus package that Barack Obama found when he bailed them banks out to help the average family survive. Because you tell them they can't go to work, the job ain't making no money, especially for the small business owner. What a stimulus package. In fact, you better have that already ready. Because the rent man and the mortgage company ain't saying, we ain't got no coronavirus. You better send that payment in. And see, those people don't have experience because their bank account has more than 6 months savings in it, no problem. We don't.
Yeah.
And they don't have experience. And that's what I'm saying. When Apostle Paul said to become common things to all men, unto the weak he became weak that he may win some, I can relate to that. I can relate how I can be content in whatever state I'm in. I can be content. I've had 3 years worth of savings before. Now they've had like 3 days worth of savings. But I ain't worried about it. I got a patent that's approved. I'm working on the automotive industry, resurrecting, the old cars, Model Ts and things like that. Having them, I met a biochemist online today to see how to have cars run off hemp fuel and
how cool would that to be to have a Model T? Because wasn't that Henry Ford, and he made a Model T that was completely made out of hemp?
Yeah, and I don't know if it was that.
Maybe it wasn't a Model T, but yeah.
But I know he started out with the hemp, but it was another guy, Mr. Patterson, was the black guy that invented the Model T Ford before Henry Ford. And see, this is all documented. So, and I the reason why I bring that up is because it is. The black people, which I don't really like saying black because it's not a nationality, but let's just say that, they keep saying, well, we want a bailout package. We want reparations. And I'm saying, look at your history and you will see hundreds of people overcoming Black Wall Street, millionaires, and didn't get a bailout. Now, if you want the land that was promised after the Civil War, the 40 acres, that's great, because I know how to implement that, which is part of the criminal justice reform. Because if you go into the disenfranchised community and say, give us the ghettos, I don't want no government assistance in the ghettos no more. And you take a person like Jay-Z, Nas, or Queen Latifah, who has a affordable housing blueprint project in New Jersey she already built, and you turn the ghetto into sustainable housing, energy efficient, and help those people with a 3-year, 5-year, 7-year plan. Now they can pay limited taxes on the land that they owe, no longer dependent on the government, and now they become self-sufficient. Now you teach the trade vocational. They can build their way up out of poverty. And what's more better, owning the land or getting a check that you don't even know how to balance in your own checkbook now? Which one makes more sense? The land.
Yeah,
that's what it would take. Yeah. And I know it's possible because the Native Americans did the same thing with the reservations. So now, and then the police officers, because criminal justice reform deals with the police. If you're not living or in this community or within a 5-mile radius, don't police our community, because I want to see you at church. I want to see you at the movie theater. I want to see you at your grocery store. So now we have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you know when little buddy over here, Laquan McDonald, is high off drugs, you're not going to shoot him 16 times, because you see what he's going through at home, and you might want to be a mentor to him as opposed to being an oppressor to him. Simple. But if you don't know me, you can't relate to me, you're just going to do what you see is the easiest way to do something, because it's a self-hate. It's something embedded in us. If you love yourself, you would never want to harm another person unless you have to defend yourself, which is libertarian principles, and it's definitely God. God say, the scripture say, turn the other cheek. That's what Jesus' job was. You're not finna come over here and try to rob me, rape my wife, and say, well, you said you was a Christian, turn the other cheek. You see how quick I turned the cheek. Come over here with that mess. Samson gonna raise up on you. We're not doing that over here. And I make it plain. I love my family. I love my wife. I love any human, just like I say at any other time. If Donald Trump came to the hood and got lost and my buddy saw him and thought they was going to jump on him, oh no, I'm riding with Trump. Because he's a human. That's why.
And it was only 10 years ago, maybe less than that, where Donald Trump was named in rap videos, and he was people wanted to be like Donald Trump, but not anymore. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong.
Right.
I'm just saying it's a fact.
Right.
But Andy, I want to give you some time here, and thank you first of all for being so gracious with your time. I originally told you 40 minutes. We're going on past an hour now, but
Ooh. I
definitely want you to plug your website where people can donate, where people can volunteer, where they can get involved with your campaign.
My website is www.awj2020.com. awj2020.com. That's my Facebook page. That's my Instagram page. We're updating the website daily, but there's a donate page on there. Gives you my background, my 3 platforms, which is human rights, criminal justice reform, economic empowerment, to make America great. It's real easy. Follow the golden rule. That's general across the board. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And that's how you would make America great. Real simple. Mm-hmm. It's the simplest way.
How are you adjusting your campaign now with obviously limited travel with coronavirus, bunch of conventions, maybe all remaining conventions, state conventions have been canceled?
Well, honestly, like I said, that's God's problem.
Mm-hmm.
He called me to do this. So I can just say, God, whatever your will is, let it be done. I got a letter Sunday from Jimmy Carter. I got a letter back today from T.D. Jakes Ministries. I have a huge letter writing campaign. I wrote to Anderson Cooper, Ellen DeGeneres. I wrote to Oprah's magazine, which Oprah, I'm going to get feedback from her at some point. Because back in 2005, a book called The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. The book changed my life. Like, I probably ordered well over 1,200 of these books, and I would give them away. You know, that's one of the, I would always buy books that inspired me and give them away. I negotiate the price in bulk. In fact, Billy Graham's daughter worked at the bookstore when at the Moulton Up Publishing, whatever it was, and we talked, like, boom, and that's who was the one, and I got the books for $5, cheaper than Bruce Wilkinson. The author didn't even get them for my price. I'm a negotiator. And I sent Oprah Studios back in 2005 Christmas, I believe it was, 510 of those books, and I got the card that was sent back from them saying, we received your books and we love it. Oprah and the staff loves the book. That book, the reason why I sent it to them is because Oprah, like I said before, she inspired me, especially in 1994 when she had the Ku Klux Klan on her show. And she said, I learned from them this day. I'm like, what? But those are the things that inspire Andy. You know, when it's something that seems out of the norm and you're quote unquote praising that, I want to know where that comes from. What's up with that? And so I don't know her personally, but her platform and what she's accomplished and overcame, I love that. You know, she's inspiring to me. You know, she just is. Yeah, just like Jimmy Carter.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Oprah running for president in 2024.
Yeah, I don't think so. That's not her calling.
Yeah.
I watch it. Like, I watch a lot of people, you know, enough. I got my favorites. Oprah's one, and she talks about her calling. That's not her calling. She's where she needs to be at. And that's why I feel like to connect with her, you know, Jay-Z, it's certain people that know who they are, their calling, they're like, that's Andy's calling. So we'll support him, because when people know who they are and what they want out of life, they can identify when somebody else has the same calling. So it's like, no, he's really called to be the president. Like, I am 46. You know, this, like, we're not going to debate about what I believe God called me for. And that's to be the 46th president of the United States. Now, guess what? I'm the 46th president of the United States because I self-declared it. Now what? How about that?
I like it. Yeah. Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your story. But just as importantly, for everything that you've done in the past and continue to do in your community. So you are a true testament for what a libertarian should be, in my opinion. Because a libertarian, you know, there's a philosophy, and then there's the action, and you're taking daily action. So thank you for that.
No problem. We got to do what we got to do by any means necessary. So, yeah. I don't say give me liberty or give me death. I say give me liberty and I have life. Because we ain't talking about death. We only talk about life. Now, that's it. We only talk about life. We don't even talk about death. We don't control death. Mm-hmm. We make choices, and I choose to live.
Amen to that. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'll be seeing you, talking to you soon.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Another great episode of Felony Friday. As you know, Felony Friday is one of 3 shows we have here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, we kick off every single week with our Monday show hosted by Mark Claire. It's our longest running program, our flagship program, where Mark interviews leaders in the Liberty movement. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land hosted by Brian McWilliams. It's your weekly shot of culture, comedy, liberty, swearing, and just good fun. Check that out. You can get all 3 shows by subscribing for the great price of $0 per month. You get everything that we have here. So please check everything out. And if you like it all, please consider supporting what we're doing here at Lions of Liberty. A great way to do that is by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Another great way of doing that is by following, liking, sharing our stuff on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Lions of Liberty. On Instagram and Twitter, we are at Lions of Liberty. and the discussion forum where all the greatest and brightest minds go to talk about politics, liberty, everything that's happening in the world today, current events. The Lions of Liberty Forum on Facebook, which you can find by typing Lions of Liberty Forum in the search bar at the top of Facebook, clicking search, comes up, say you want to join it, answer a question, bam, you're in, and the rest is just going to be a great journey for you. So check that out. That's all I have for today. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.